is CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello there, I'm Paul Barber. Our top stories this hour. China on a diplomatic charm offensive as President Xi Jinping receives prime ministers from Singapore, Malaysia and Spain in Beijing. Donald Trump is expected to appear in court next week as the first former US president to face criminal charges. The UK agrees its biggest trade deal since Brexit, joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP. But what benefit will it bring? And Oscar Pistorius loses his bid for early release. His victim's mother claims he's not remorseful or rehabilitated. China's president has held high-level talks with the prime ministers of Singapore, Malaysia and Spain. Xi Jinping welcomed each leader in Beijing and pledged cooperation to share opportunities of growth. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says his country wants a balanced relationship with China. He also announced a tourism forum between the two countries will take place in June. CGTN's Huang Yue is in Beijing live for us now. Huang Yue, what have President Xi and Prime Minister Sanchez been discussing?
Yes, during the meeting with the Spanish Prime Minister, Xi Jinping said China and Spain have maintained exchanges and dialogue in the past half-century and carried on their cooperation of mutual benefit and developed a comprehensive strategic partnership. Xi Jinping said that China is now pushing forward the high-quality development and is willing to provide broader market space and more cooperation opportunities to the world, of course, including Spain. And he also said China is willing to import more products from Spain and hopes that Spain can create a fair and just business environment. In the meantime, Xi Jinping said the two countries should support each other on issues related to each other's core interests like sovereignty, security, and development. And Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez also said that amid the current global uncertainty, only cooperation can help deal with all kinds of challenges effectively and promote world peace and development. He said Spain is willing to deepen cooperation with China in various sectors, and the two sides exchanged views on the Ukraine issue. The two leaders underscored the importance of dialogue and a politically negotiated resolution to the ongoing Ukraine crisis.
So a very busy day for President Xi and Prime Minister Sanchez, his trip coming at a critical junction for China-Europe relations.
Yes, it's the first time for the Spanish Prime Minister to visit China, and as the two countries celebrate their 50th anniversary of the diplomatic ties, and Sanchez's visit will bring more cooperation possibilities to the two countries, not only in economy, trade and investment, but also in people-to-people exchanges like culture, education and tourism. And it's also worth mentioning that Spain will take over the rotating presidency of the Council of the EU. So this visit by the Spanish Prime Minister is very important not only for the bilateral relations, but also to the ties between China and the European Union, especially under the current global situation. And as Europe is still suffering from the ongoing geopolitical crisis, and the US financial system is bringing increasing uncertainties and risks to the Western economic recovery this year. So now it seems the world is placing greater hope on China to drive the post-pandemic recovery in 2030. And also, Sanchez is among the several European leaders who have visited last year or are planning to visit China recently. So analysts said it shows that Europe has realized the negative impact of decoupling and the huge demand for deepening cooperation with China. And like what Xi Jinping mentioned during today's meeting, that the sound development of China-EU relations requires the EU to uphold its strategic autonomy. But whether the EU can withstand the pressures from the United States and pursue its own interests, this remains to be seen.
Yue, thank you very much indeed for that. Huang Yue there in Beijing. In other news, Donald Trump is expected to appear in court on Tuesday as the first former US president to face criminal charges. Trump was indicted on Thursday by a grand jury in New York over an alleged hush money payment to an adult film star during the 2016 presidential campaign. Trump denounced the indictment, calling it political persecution at the highest level. The unprecedented legal case has the potential to reshape the American political landscape ahead of next year's election. Our correspondent John Terrett is live in New York for us. John, this is quite a wow moment, isn't it? What is the latest?
You know, Paul, it really is a wow moment. It is legal and political history being made in the United States in the past 24 hours. Never before has a former commander-in-chief been charged with a criminal charge until now. Now, those charges remain sealed after a Manhattan grand jury within the past 24 hours voted in favor of indicting former President Donald Trump. We don't know what the charges against him actually are. They remain sealed, but we're told there are at least 30 of them, and they seem to center around the mismanagement of documents by President Trump and the Trump Organization, and essentially business fraud. Now, they stem from that payment before the 2016 election to the adult actress Stormy Daniels. That payment was made, but the charges seem to be about how the Trump Organization and President Trump authorizing it characterized those payments in legal campaign documents. President Trump, as you said, says it's political persecution and election interference. He said it's weaponizing the justice system and doing Joe Biden's job for him. Republicans are rallying around President Trump. Ted Cruz, who's the junior senator from Texas in the south of the country, called it the death of the rule of law. Lindsey Graham, a senator from South Carolina, said it was motivated by fear. And even Mike Pence, President Trump's own vice president, said the whole thing was completely outrageous. No formal word from the White House yet. President Biden said no comment on his way out of the door this morning. And you must understand just how politicized America is at the moment and how politicized this case is at the moment. So from Americans' point of view, it boils down to whether you think Donald Trump is a scoundrel or whether you think he's a man of the people. Paul?
So, John, this really ratchets everything up by several gears. What could happen next?
Alvin Bragg, who is the Manhattan district attorney, is said to have wanted to have President Trump actually here at the courthouse this morning on Friday. The Secret Service said, no, that's simply not possible. And that's because there's a number of government agencies that will be required to bring him from his home in Florida to this courthouse in Lower Manhattan. So we think it's going to happen on Tuesday now. But this is the point. This now is the point. He's going to have to be booked in like any other defendant in this court, and that means fingerprints, DNA tests, a mugshot. He's also going to have the indictment unsealed before the charge is read before the judge, and then he will be granted bail. What we don't know is whether there'll be a perp walk, whether he will enter the court in handcuffs or not. I believe that's still being negotiated, and we don't know whether he'll come in the front door or the back door. That again is being negotiated. Legal experts in America don't think he'll end up with jail time. They think it's more likely to be a big fine, but it could be jail time.
John Terrett with the latest there from New York. Many thanks. And joining me now for more on this is Scott Lucas, Professor of US Politics at University College Dublin. Thank you very much indeed for being with us today. Everyone seems to agree this case sets a precedent. Historically, how significant could it be?
Well, to start with why it is unprecedented, the closest that a president, former president, has come before in the U.S. to criminal charges is probably Richard Nixon after the Watergate affair of 1974. But when Nixon resigned as president, before he could face criminal charges over the break-in and the cover-up against the Democratic headquarters, his successor, President Gerald Ford, pardoned him. Now, in this case, Donald Trump had investigated pardoning himself. He wasn't able to do so. So he was liable, not only in this case, but on others, to face prosecution, both civil and criminal prosecutions. Indeed, only a few months ago, the Trump Organization, Trump's business, was found guilty in a New York civil case and paid a heavy fine, and it was found guilty in a criminal case. One of its top executives was found guilty and received a sentence. So, no, we have not come this close to a former president going on trial over what reportedly are multiple felony charges, but we haven't faced a former president who's trying to get back into the White House facing a trial, or indeed facing possible trials on other cases revolving around, for example, election interference, the Capitol attack of January 2021, and other Trump business and tax practices.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. There is an election next year, a presidential election. Constitutionally, where does this leave Trump's bid for re-election? Does this indictment stop him in any way from running?
No, I mean, legally it has no effect on the candidacy because you can be indicted and still run for president. And you can even be convicted of a felony and still run for president. There's no prohibition in the U.S. Constitution against that. Now, if Donald Trump happened to be reelected president at the same time that he was convicted and possibly face prison, there is a provision which says that a federal official can be removed for crimes. But we've never faced in terms of invoking this against a president. So not sure where we go there. What I can tell you is what is already happening. Rather than dealing with the legal process, as you and I are discussing, you have a battle here between those who say the legal system must continue its work, even if the U.S. campaign for president goes on, whether Trump is acquitted or whether he's convicted. On the other side, you have Trump and his allies, some of whom you just named, who are they're gaslighting. And by gaslighting, what I mean is, rather than dealing with the facts of the case, rather than support the legal process, they're trying to tear the legal process down by blaming and insulting others. The New York District Attorney, prosecutors, the grand jury, the entire U.S. judicial system, which is why beyond the importance of this case, as historic as it is, this is the wider importance of it is Donald Trump or it is the U.S. legal system which you support here. There is nothing in between.
And there's no doubting that there is a groundswell of support for Mr. Trump still. What does this mean for next year's political campaigning, both Republican and Democrat, the tone and tenor of the debate?
Well, the first thing that I would tell you here is that I think the importance is that this legal process should not be corrupted or distorted in any way by political calculations. So those who say, oh, this legal process should not be undertaken because it will help Trump win the election, I don't buy that. And I certainly don't buy the idea that this legal process was timed to prevent Trump from winning. What you will hear is from Trump and his supporters that they have this huge camp of supporters, their base. I know some of these people. Some of them are in my family. But I also know that they are a minority of Americans. Remember, Trump lost the 2020 election, and recent polls show that a majority of Americans believe that if he is indicted, he in fact should not become president again. So Trump and his folks will whip this up, that this politically, this case helps him. The fact of the matter is the case should proceed as it does, and the U.S. election, which isn't for another 20 months, it is a twisted and long process, and I don't think you can say at this point whether or not Donald Trump, one of his Republican opponents, or Joe Biden will be the ultimate winner.
It is going to be quite the spectacle. Thank you very much indeed for that analysis. Professor Scott Lucas, thank you.
Thank you.
Some of the other day's headlines now, and the head of NATO says Finland will formally join the military alliance in the coming days. It comes after Turkey's decision to ratify its accession during a late-night vote in Parliament. Ankara had delayed Finland's membership bid for months, accusing the Nordic nation of supporting terrorists. But recently, President Erdogan gave his approval, praising the country's concrete steps on Turkish security. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has called for a truce and for talks without conditions to begin between Russia and Ukraine. In an address to the nation, Lukashenko warned that if Russia felt its existence was threatened, then it would be forced to use nuclear weapons. He also alleged that Western countries intend to invade Belarus. And at least 36 people have died after the roof of a well collapsed at a temple complex in central India. Police said dozens of people fell into the water when a concrete slab covering the 18-metre deep well gave way. It happened as people were gathering to celebrate a Hindu festival. Authorities are investigating the cause of the collapse. You're watching CGTN. Still to come, we're live in Johannesburg as Oscar Pistorius is denied parole over the killing of Reeva Steenkamp.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with global business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Hello there, welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. China on a diplomatic charm offensive as President Xi receives prime ministers from Singapore, Malaysia and Spain in Beijing. Donald Trump is expected to appear in courts next week as the first former US president to face criminal charges. Oscar Pistorius, who murdered his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp in 2013, has been denied parole. The former South African Paralympic athlete was eligible to apply for early release, having served half of his 13-year sentence. Pistorius killed Riva Steenkamp when he fired 4 times through the bathroom door in his house in Pretoria. And our correspondent C.S. du Plessis is in Johannesburg now. So parole was denied. What were the reasons for that?
Yes, Paul, well, it's a bit of a surprise because does have nothing to do with his behavior or anything. The time that he served is the question that has been earmarked. So the Supreme Court of Appeal sent a clarification order to the parole board on the 28th of March, so before today's parole hearing in Attridgeville, which states that Oscar Pistorius has not completed the minimum time required to be considered for parole. So on a technicality essential, and it's a bit of an egg in the face situation for the parole board and for correctional services here in South Africa because they've got their dates wrong. So all of a sudden, Oscar Pistorius now needs to wait until August 2024 for his next opportunity to apply for parole. So it has been a bit of a damp squib, if you can put it that way, because it was a gloomy day in Pretoria. The world's media were there waiting to see if Oscar Pistorius would get parole. At the end of the day, it all came down to the Supreme Court of Appeal saying he needs to serve longer time before he can be considered for parole.
And CS, what about the reaction from Riva Steenkamp's family? I understand they were in court. This must still seem very raw to them.
Yeah, Riva Steenkamp's mom, June, was outside of the Attridgeville prison, and she said to media just after she had submitted her presentation or application, if you like, that she was opposed to parole. And I think they haven't released a statement right now, but I think there is a sense of relief because Barry Steenkamp was too ill to attend the parole hearing, but they are all quite relieved. And I think the lawyer, Tanya Kuhn, will address the media or be sending out a statement at some point. For now, though, Oscar Pistorius continues to draw mixed reactions across South Africa. A lot of people think he's old news. With a country that suffers from gender-based violence problems, a lot of people feel Oscar Pistorius should be made an example of. But on the other hand, has he served enough time yet? Clearly, he still has a year to go. So we'll have to wait until August 2024 to see if the disgraced Paralympian and Olympian does get parole.
C.S. du Plessis in Johannesburg. Thank you very much. Britain has struck a trade deal that will see it join the 11-member Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP. It's the UK's biggest trade deal since leaving the European Union 3 years ago. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says joining the Trans-Pacific Trade Bloc will deepen ties in the region and build Britain's global links. The deal will be formally signed at the end of the year after Parliament and the Member States give their approval. And our correspondent Michael Voss is here with us now for more. Why is this so important, Michael, this deal?
Well, having left the European Union 3 years ago, Britain is searching benefits, for what they call these new trade deals. And this is, as you say, the biggest trade deal that Britain is involved with since it left the European Union 3 years ago. This bloc includes about 500 million people. On one side of the Pacific, you've got Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, Australia and New Zealand. The other side of the Pacific, you've got Canada, Mexico, Chile and Peru. So a large trade bloc. Now, Britain is hoping this will be tariff-free. So Britain's hoping that exports of things like gin and whiskey, cheese, chocolate, machinery will get a boost. Critics are pointing out, though, perhaps controversially, that part of this deal is tariff-free exports or imports into Britain of palm oil from Malaysia. Britain's been trying to cut palm oil usage on environmental grounds.
And the government saying this is the biggest trade deal since Brexit. There hasn't been a huge amount of reaction here, has there? How do people feel about this?
I mean, I think critics are pointing out that actually Britain has trade deals already with all but 2 of these 11 countries, except for Brunei and Malaysia. Also, according to government figures, this deal will only add about 0.08%, less than 1% of economic growth over the next 10 years, compared to the loss of 4% growth for having left Brexit. So, I mean, there is controversy over this one. Trade organisations here are happy with it. It's going to make supply chains easier, and the bloc could get bigger. China, for example, has applied to join as well.
We shall see. Michael Voss, thank you very much indeed. Voters in Finland head to the polls on Sunday to elect the country's next leadership. It's expected to be a tightly contested race between the 3 parties as Prime Minister Sanna Marin's Social Democrats fight to secure a second term running the government. Our correspondent Alyosha Milenkovic reports from Helsinki.
Political parties are ramping up their campaigns, hoping for more last-minute votes. At this place in the center of Helsinki, political parties present their programs to the voters. And the politicians are coming here to meet their voters who can choose which political option is the best for them. This is a true political market. And as it turns out to be, this type of political marketing isn't characteristic just for the capital. Some half hour by train is a town of Vantaa. Every weekend there is a makeshift market in one of its suburbs. This time, besides the fairground attractions, fresh flowers and handmade baskets, there are political activists who try to sell their ideas and candidates to the market visitors. And the visitors came here with clear expectations.
Everybody must have enough money to live on. Education and healthcare must be taken care of, or at least the level of service doesn't drop.
Even one of Finland's top political figures came here for one-on-ones with the voters. Riikka Purra is the leader of the nationalistic Finns party, and she shared with us her opinion about what comes next after the elections.
Useampi puolue on ilmoittanut, että meidän kanssa ei yhteistyötä tee.
Several parties have announced they will not cooperate with us. The largest of them is the Social Democrats. If Sanna Marin was serious and it was not an election strategy, we would likely negotiate with the Conservatives.
Neuvotellaan sitten kokoomuksen suuntaan.
And here is Sanna Marin, Finnish Prime Minister and the leader of the Social Democratic Party at the TV debate on Finnish national television. Although the opinion polls predict her losing her job as Prime Minister, she's keeping her optimism high.
I think we will win. We are aiming, of course, winning the elections to also be Prime Minister party in the future. We have alternative to the Conservatives' budget cutting. We have alternative that we are telling to the people, and I think we will win these elections.
A post-election coalition in Finland is inevitable, as none of the parties have enough support to win single-handedly. The main question, though, will be who will create it with whom? Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Helsinki.
China is open for business. That was the message this week at the high-level economic Bao Forum, which wrapped up in Hainan province. The international summit, touted as Asia's answer to the World Economic Forum in Davos, saw thousands of delegates from around the world discussing trade, investment, geopolitics and security. Our correspondent Zheng Chunying reports.
Unity, cooperation, openness and inclusiveness. They are some of the key words when it comes to the consensus reached at this year's Boao Forum for Asia Annual Conference. Li Baodong, the Secretary General of the Boao Forum for Asia, spoke highly of the event at the closing ceremony of the conference, saying it had managed to create a platform for international delegates to exchange views, propose tangible suggestions and forge ties.
We have received much feedback on how the agenda of this year's conference covered almost all critical issues affecting the Asian region and the world, and how it worked to promote international cooperation.
And cooperation is even more crucial for Asia in particular. The official pointed out that as the world is facing such high levels of uncertainty, Asia's development depends on the continent remaining stable, inclusive and open.
Asia is an important driving force of the global economic recovery and is a region full of vitality and potential. In order to achieve prosperous development in Asian regions, countries must be stable, open and inclusive, and they should continue to deepen collaboration.
Although the annual conference has come to an end with many achievements, the official said that the Boao Forum for Asia is expected to host more activities and workshops later this year, both in China and abroad, in order to create more platforms for international delegates to explore more opportunities for win-win cooperation. Zheng Chunying, CGTN, Boao in Hainan Province.
And our headlines again here on CGTN. China on a diplomatic charm offensive as President Xi Jinping receives prime ministers from Singapore, Malaysia and Spain in Beijing. And Donald Trump is expected to appear in court next week as the first former US president to face criminal charges. And the UK has agreed its biggest trade deal since Brexit, joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. I'll be back with the latest headlines at the top of the hour. Up next, it's World Insight with Tian Wei.
Hi there and welcome to Weather Forecast. Let's see what happened in Europe over this weekend. You can see widespread precipitation will become a major concern. For example, Saturday, light to mild rainfall stretching from Ireland and all the way to the eastern portion in the form of sleet or even snowfall. As we look into Sunday, you're going to have very similar picture. On the contrary, lowering chances to be had in much of Northern Europe, the UK, Ireland and parts of Iberian Peninsula. Temperature may also have some fluctuation this weekend. You can see Saturday cooling down, stretching from northern portions, central all the way to western Europe. Looking to Sunday, the precipitation will make conditions even worse, and warming temperatures over to parts of Russia. Daily highs be going from lower teens to single digits, and minimum temperatures be close to freezing point or be below freezing point. You better dress up accordingly. And our business and travel outlook, we're going to have plenty of sunshine in Copenhagen, Stockholm 6 for daily highs, 3 to -7 in Helsinki, sleet turning to partly sunny sky in Minsk, 4 to -4, light rainfall taking place in Kiev and Moscow Sunday with daily highs around 10. Back to western portion, you can see lower teens for daily highs in London and Paris. Well, that's it for now. Stay tuned for more city forecast.